Hello, my fellow readers. I Dark Symphony 777 with our FanFiction review. As always, a link to the story will be in the description. Please like, subscribe to the channel, and if you have an idea for your future story, leave it in the comments as well as your own opinions. As always, I will always say this is my opinions. My opinions do not count among the entire fan base of a particular fandom. Now, if you remember a few videos ago, I reviewed Alice Reflection of Madness by Wile E. Coyote, and he's back again. This time, I'm reviewing his take on the original game, American McGee's Alice. And this is coming from someone who literally just beat the game on Nightmare difficulty. Majestic Maze can go in the dumpster and kill it with fire. Yeah, that sort of thing. So, the story is called Beyond a Shattered Looking Glass. Wiley, this is for you. So, one thing you gotta know about the story is I actually kind of came into trouble wanting to do this review, mainly because when it comes to like sequential stories, you read the first story and then you continue on. I did the complete opposite, mainly because when I went on the Alice fanfiction section, Beyond Reflection of Madness was literally right at the top. I picked it and I decided to review that. I didn't realize at the time that he'd written something based off American McGee's Alice. Not to mention, when he messaged me he told me that, the writing's not as good as was in Reflection of Madness, and this story kind of shows that, because this story was written in 2008, May 6, 2008. That was when it was first released, and alright, let me just see. When was Reflection of Madness came out? Reflection of Madness came out in October 21st, 2011, and that one took about 7 years. Well, this one took about 3 years. So we got a very old story in terms of American McGee's Alice. Again, going up against the sequel, which is much, much better. So I was worried that when I decided to do the story, that I kind of creep in some kind of bias toward the sequel. I'd be too harsh on this story because it's really not as good as the Madness Returns novel retelling. I don't care what he says, it's retelling. I'm calling it a retelling. And I hope, I don't get too harsh on this and everything. So now that that's out of the way, let's start with the plot. There's two plots. There's Alice's journey through this version of Wonderland, where the Queen of Hearts / Red Queen is kind of declaring war with the Jabberwock and trying to take over Alice. And then we have the real world where it stars Dr. Would be focusing on the asylum, revolving around the booklet that actually came with the game when at launch. Like if you bought a physical copy of American McGee's, it came with a little notebook of detailing events in asylum, her rehabilitation that kind of leads her to leaving the asylum, that sort of thing. And for the most part, I actually think the plot is okay. I mean, there is a lot to digest. I think the idea of a war-torn Wonderland would genuinely make a very, very good story. But this is not it. For one thing, the plot is all over the place. I understand it's Alice in Wonderland, so the plot is going to be kind of over the place, but it seems okay at best. It could be done. It's honestly not being used for its full potential. For one thing that we're going to go over is the simple fact that it kind of rushes through the plot. I mean, with the asylum parts, that's splattered in multiple places, so the plot is actually kind of better, as well as the pacing, but there's something really off. I can't really describe it over the Wonderland sections. The asylum sections is basically just Dr. Wilson, trying to cure Alice, and we're introduced to a bunch of other characters, Nurse D, Lorena, and it's basically just a novelization of the little guidebook that came with the physical copy. Character development. Characters are all over the place. It's really kind of a symptom of the short length. There's 58,000 words in the story, compared to the sequel, which is about 130,000 words. So the sequel has about 80,000 words on the story, and I think that would probably be the story's biggest problem, is that it's too short to tell the story it needs to be told. Aside from like the asylum parts, character development, characters are kind of all over the place. We don't get enough of certain characters to really get a beat on them. We got Alice and Cheshire and Dr. Wilson and Nursey, and that's, in terms of actual characters, that's it. Lorena, I understand. Lorena's supposed to play a peripheral character that only really shows up when the story fits right. So it's understandable that she doesn't get a lot of screen time. Certain other characters, I would actually liked more development with the Jabberwocky, the Mad Hatter, and the Queen. I would have liked more scenes with them. Especially, with like Alice's journey, them doing commentary on Alice's journey throughout the parts of Wonderland. One thing I think was a missed opportunity in terms of characters was actually the 6 generals. In the school chapter, we're introduced to a really muscular card guard name, I believe. I think it's chapter 3. Where is he? Let's see. Where is it? Okay, here it is. Let's see. Commander Hartley, one of the elite card commanders under the service of Queen of Hearts. I am also one of the Queen's 6 generals. So, I understand why he added this character. Because if you remember the actual game, you have the Jabberwocky, you have Tweedledum and Tweedledee. I count them as one general because they kind of work together. The Mad Hatter, the Red King, and the Jabberwocky, Tweedledum, Tweedledee, Mad Hatter, Red King, and the Voracious Centipede. So you're pretty much one general short. So I like the idea of introducing a 6th general, unless you're going to count Tweedledum and Tweedledee as 2 different people. I'm not going to do that. I thought he was an okay villain. I actually would have liked it if Heartbleed actually chased Alice through all Wonderland, because that would have given it a sense of actual horror, because now you have this like dogged general trying to get rid of Alice through hell or high water. And he would have been okay. He would have actually been an intriguing minor antagonist. I think. I really think the author should have did more with him. The Mad Hatter, the Pale Royalty, every other character aside from the main 4 characters are pretty much bare bones. Granted, you don't get more with that. You don't get anything really concrete with them. They're just there. They go for like a scene or 2, and that's it. So it's understandable, but this is a novelization, which means you have to at least try to expand on their characters, like the author did with Reflections of Madness, and probably with the 3rd story in the series. Pacing. This is another problem with this. That's connected to the length of the story. The pacing is too rushed. Granted, you can't really go everywhere in the game. Granted, he skipped the Majestic Maze, which, thank God, that level still needs to go into a dumpster fire. I hate that level. Still hate that level. I just beat it. I beat it on Nightmare, and it's like, holy shit! Why is there like so many enemies? And not to mention the enemies kept literally respawning, so it's like you couldn't even permanently get rid of them unless you go out of your way to try to get rid of them. But I didn't like the pacing. I think the pacing was a little too fast for the story. It could have been slowed down in pieces. Honestly, I think the Pale Realm could have been just a huge arc by itself, like dedicate like 3 chapters to just the Pale Realm and the war between the white and red chess pieces all themselves, and then like the 3rd chapter being against the Mad Hatter, and everything. What's next? Oh yeah, and imagery. There's not enough done with the imagery. Like if it wasn't for the fact I played the game, I wouldn't even know what everything looks like, or I would have the barest essentials on how to imagine the various scenes in the story. There's no true feeling. There's no nothing. It's just I was lucky enough to play the game. Oh, thank God. So that's that part of the review. Oh, and for some reason the story is rated M, and it's a fantasy horror. What do I find wrong with that? Not much. It's just rated M for this story. I would honestly lower it to a T rating. That's just me. So, final, would I recommend this favorite part, and would I recommend, and final thoughts, my bad. Would I recommend, this is kind of a hard one because the characters kind of develop through here, like Alice. She acts like Alice in the game at first, and then she starts, I need to redeem myself, I need to fix Wonderland, it's all my fault, but it's not my fault, and then it's like, I need to heal myself, which carries over into how she develops in the sequel. But at the same time, there's so much wrong. Oh, I forgot. Now I remember, I forgot grammar. God dang it. There's a lot of grammar errors, that's all you need to know. Why did I skip that? I don't know. What am I thinking of? Why am I thinking of chocolate again? Maybe it's like my mom's telling me to get a chocolate bar. No. Would I recommend it? It has a lot of problems that can not be denied. It cannot. The characters are all over the place. The pacing is walking. The plot is lacking, aside from the asylum parts. It's just, I can't. But at the same time, you kind of need to read this to kind of get some of the stuff in the sequel. I mean, you're not going to figure out certain parts, and you're going to be hopelessly confused, like, what? Especially if you read the story, you're more likely gonna come across the sequel first because it's newer, and then you're gonna come here. It's like, what's with the quality? And then it's just I don't know how to accurately describe it. It's like a mess. At the same time, it's like, should I really recommend it? And I was like, should I? And I keep turning this over my head, and I'm just gonna say, don't. I don't recommend it. It has a lot. I don't want to, but it has to be non-recommended. I cannot recommend a story that has so much wrong with it. Favorite part? I actually... what part was it? There was one part, I believe... there was a couple parts. There was like the little image of Alice kind of going mad with like the spork and like smacking the workers with the spoons, like, ow, 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 get off me, she's trying to stop me with a spoon. What was it? I believe it was... I don't have a favorite part. I mean, I like the part where she's stabbing it, but it's like, but nothing really good enough to really elevate it. Final thoughts. If I had to change anything, first off, change the rating to T. Keep the fantasy horror. I think that fits, but there's not enough horror elements to really justify the horror tag. I think you could easily expand upon that. It's easy enough to do. Just add more stuff that technically constitutes horror, because this seems more like just a straight old fantasy than anything as it stands right now. Like, you can even change it to fantasy drama, with drama representing the stuff going on in the asylum and the fantasy going on in Wonderland. Fix the pacing, fix the grammar errors. Oh my god, a lot of grammar errors. expand upon the plot, make each area a little longer, so that way we have a feeling. More descriptions on the areas. Not overly describe them, but at least add a little more detail, so people who never played the game, or at least can easily picture it in their heads, and feel what's going on around them. The characters, in terms of the Asylum characters, keep those the same, because they're enough that at least you can justify not having that expanded. If you want to expand that, that one's optional. Make Cartart actually chase Alice. That'd be a good idea, because he's a new character. Have him not in charge of the school, but have him constantly appear everywhere, like a large contingency of card guards constantly chasing Alice, because it'd add a core element to it, because now she's being hunted a lot. Have running commentary from the Jabberwocky, from the Queen, from the Mad Hatter over everything, except when they die, so it's like add a little more nods. One big thing that I didn't like about the sequel is that they didn't try and constitute the stuff that they kept in the sequel and carried on to the new game. And I really wished that the author Wiley could redo the story, add little clips or foreshadowing that's gonna take place inside the sequel. So it's like Lizzie is a thing, have mentioned Lizzie, that'd be an easy thing to add. Have a cameo by Dr. Bumby at the end of a new psychologist, as a new therapist. When you're leaving, it said, here's a new therapist, his name is Dr. Bumby, he might be able to help you. That would actually add a bit more immersion, and also kind of carry on into the sequel. Now, as for the final thoughts, I can't wait to see what the author done, because this one is more lackluster than anything else, while the second story is actually really, really good, as well as the upcoming, when he's going to be working on the third story where Alice is going to be going against Little Red Riding Hood. I cannot wait for that, because I want to see how he does Little Red Riding Hood, and maybe, he might do other fairy tales like Goldilocks and the Three Blind Mice and the Big Bad Wolf and stuff like that. I really want to see that, but as it stands right now, I really do think this story can succeed. It honestly can. It just needs some TLC, fix up the plot, fix up the characters, fix up the pacing. Most of all, 58,000 words is not an ample enough time to tell this type of story. It needs to at least be 100,000, maybe more, depending on how much fluff you want to add. And that's pretty much the review. So, tell me what you think of the story. This has been Dark Symphony 777, and